Welcome to the Wall Street Exclusive. I'm Joe Springer, helping you make informed decisions so you can succeed in the market. I am very thrilled to have Tonix Pharmaceuticals CEO Dr. Seth Lederman and Tonix Pharmaceuticals CFO Dr. Leland Gershell in studio for an interview over Skype. Very thrilled. Let's see what they have to say. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us, Joe. We're delighted to be on the show.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much. Now, I've been with you guys with your story for a long time here, and you guys have you've had some very exciting things happen. You're a very exciting company, kind of an unusual company. I'm going to launch right in with my first official question here. So you are developing first-in-class medicines for some of the most common disorders of the central nervous system. These are some of the largest unmet medical needs, period, and companies much larger than Tonix have seemed to give up on some of these problems. Can you talk about your perspective and approach that has led you into what look like some very promising programs?
Well, thank you very much, Joe, and we really appreciate your interest in our company. You know, I've been working in the drug industry for a long time now, and you can never figure out why other people aren't working on the problems you're working on. But I can say we're working on these problems because we have a passion for them. We think that the problems that we're working on, fibromyalgia, post-traumatic stress disorder, and tension-type headache, are three enormous unmet medical needs. And we are really excited about the prospects about bringing new therapies to patients who suffer from these problems. The industry has changed, Joe, as you know, and many of the big companies just wait until a company like ours has brought products up to the point where they are big enough and de-risked enough, to fit into their pipeline. So we don't think it's a lack of interest on the other companies' parts, but we just think that we're fortunate to be taking through these products through the early stages of development to where they are now, where we have 3 products in the clinic, so late-stage company. And, we've really evolved in a short period of time. Even in the past 6 months, we were known as a fibromyalgia company, but now we're really a portfolio company with 3 products in the clinic, and each one of them, as you said, is serving a large underserved need.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. And just to give our viewers some perspective, a company like Pfizer, for example, fibromyalgia is a very large part of what they do, and they talk about that on the calls and things like that. And they're 2,000 times the size of Tonix Pharmaceuticals. And so you guys are, you should be proud of yourselves going after those very large problems like that. All right, thank you very much. I'm going to go right into the next one here. Sleep quality is a new target for fibromyalgia therapy, an innovative way to indirectly treat the symptoms of fibromyalgia. Can you talk about how you arrived at sleep quality and why it might be an important component for treating the pain of fibromyalgia?
Thank you, Joe. Our work really started with the work of a professor in Canada, Dr. Harvey Moldavsky, who was really the first to appreciate that poor sleep quality exacerbated symptoms of fibromyalgia. And speaking to Dr. Moldavsky, he's now a consultant. He's on the scientific advisory board of Tonix. We've gotten to know him quite well, which has been a terrific experience for me because when I was a professor, I used to admire his work from afar, and now we have the opportunity to interact with him frequently. But Dr. Moldavsky credits his appreciation of the role of sleep in fibromyalgia with one thing. He said he just listened to patients. Because he said it was a discovery, but it's something patients had been saying for a long time. They'd say, "Doctor, I can't sleep." And it was confusing for people, for doctors, because when patients said they can't sleep, the doctor would then ask, "Well, what do you mean you can't sleep? Do you have trouble falling to sleep?" And they say, "No." "Do you have trouble staying asleep?" And they'd say no. They'd say, "Do you wake up early?" And the patients would say no. So the doctors would be frustrated and they'd say, "Well, what do you mean you can't sleep?" But it turned out that what the patients were trying to say, and this is what Dr. Moldavsky listened to, was that they woke up feeling like they had not had the benefit of sleep. They woke up feeling unrefreshed. So that concept of poor quality sleep that is also called non-refreshing sleep or unrefreshing sleep or non-restorative sleep, that is now widely recognized from Harvey Moldavsky's work as a central feature of fibromyalgia. So in our product, does, TNX 102SL, is Tonix's product for fibromyalgia. It's taken at bedtime every night. It's designed to be a long-term therapy. And in our phase 2 study, which we recently reported, it had strong benefits to sleep quality in fibromyalgia patients. So we believe that we have a treatment that addresses sleep quality in fibromyalgia, and after that, it led to broad activity in improving the symptoms of fibromyalgia. And these were across the board. It decreased pain, it decreased what's called the Fibromyalgia Impact Questionnaire, which is a wide variety of symptoms, including quality of life. And it also made the patients generally feel better, and that's called the PGIC, or Patient Global Impression of Change. So we're just grateful that we're able to test Dr. Moldavsky's theory with our new treatment, and that the treatment, by improving sleep quality, really delivered on having broad activity in improving fibromyalgia patient symptoms.
All right, thank you so much. And for our viewers that aren't familiar with Dr. Moldavsky, perhaps one of the #1 sleep scientists in the world, and you were absolutely right in my next question here. So in your best fit study, the benefits were broad across the board, and the drawbacks were very, very slight. So I'm going to ask the official question here. So fibromyalgia patients are desperate for relief, so much so that many turn to unhelpful and problematic drugs like opiates, which have major side effects and drawbacks. In the best fit study, there was no serious adverse events. Patients on TNX 102SL were more likely to complete the trial than those that were on placebo. That makes the results all the more exciting because TNX 102SL broadly improved symptoms, as you said, including statistically significant improvements in measures of anxiety, sensitivity, stiffness, sleep quality, and of course pain, as measured by the 30% responders analysis. That 30% responder analysis is the primary endpoint in the study you're about to launch in this next quarter. There are no guarantees, but all of that seems like excellent news going into this next trial. Can you describe the similarities similarities and differences between Best Fit and this next study you're about to launch into? And can you talk about your feelings going into that study with respect to how beneficial Best Fit looked?
Thank you, Joe. We can't wait to start the next study, and we're planning to start enrolling patients in the study in the second quarter of this year. And in general, the study is going to be a replicate study of Best Fit. It's going to be extremely similar. By the way, it's going to be called AFFIRM, AFFIRM. And the only difference is that we're going to enroll more patients. Best Fit had slightly over 200 patients, and our target for AFFIRM is 500 patients. Okay. We just want to expose more patients to the drug and do a larger study to have even more convincing evidence of the broad activity that we got in Best Fit. So it will be a 12-week study. It's called a parallel design. So one group of patients will get our treatment every night for 12 weeks, and another group of patients will be randomized to receive the placebo. And the primary endpoint in AFFIRM will be the number of patients who have a 30% improvement from baseline. Now, we've selected 30% improvement from baseline because that's the number that experts believe is a clinically meaningful improvement. And that's very important to us because if a fibromyalgia patient has a 30% decrease in pain, that's clinically meaningful. In Best Fit, as you mentioned, we had a statistically significant improvement in the number of patients who had this 30% improvement. So we think that that's a valid measure to test the effect of our drug in fibromyalgia patients. And we're also hopeful that we'll continue to see the broad activity that we had across the accepted fibromyalgia measures, like Fibromyalgia Impact Questionnaire and Patient Global. And of course, we expect to see the same sleep improvement, which is at the heart of Dr. Moldavsky's theories.
Another further point on this, Joe, is that the FDA, which of course regulates all this activity that we do, has accepted our use of the 30% responder analysis for the phase 3 trial. So we have corresponded with the FDA. This has been disclosed in our press releases. Since the results of Best Fit that came out in the fall, And we do have a sign-off from the agency to use 30% responder as a primary. So we're very excited to start the trial.
I'll bet that's very exciting news, and you got that written confirmation from the FDA. And then Leland, you had also said to me that this is going to be a little bit more than twice the size, but the timing of the trial should not be too much longer. You're going to be basically about to expand to like twice the number of sites. The best fit lasted about a year. This one maybe about a year, maybe a little bit longer, but not too much longer. Is that about the right timeline?
That's right, Joe. So in BestFit, we had 17 sites. This is all U.S. Centers. We'll have between 30 and 35 clinical centers for the phase 3. So we'll be about twice the number of sites that will be enrolling patients. So the timeline for BestFit, as you said, was about a year from start to finish. This will be a little bit longer just because of the larger trial. You do have some more logistical items, but the enrollment rate should not be much slower given the expanded number of sites. So with 500 patients, we are guiding to a Q3 of 2016 timing for reporting the top-line data.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, and then sleep quality is also a new target for post-traumatic stress disorder, which is obviously a huge problem. Can you talk about how you arrived at targeting sleep quality in PTSD?
Yes, well, our work started with fibromyalgia, and then when we began to see the impressive effects that our drug was having in fibromyalgia, we recognized, and actually some doctors came to us and helped us recognize it, that fibromyalgia and PTSD have a number of similarities. So we would like to test our drug, and we are testing our drug now, in treating PTSD. For those of you who don't know, PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder. This is a common psychiatric problem in the United States and other countries. There's civilian forms of post-traumatic stress disorder from car accidents and other kinds of traumatic events. But what's getting a lot of press now is post-traumatic stress disorder after military service. And, nothing brought that home more than in the Oscars 2 nights ago when, for example, the documentary Crisis Hotline, Veterans Press One, won the Oscar for the best short documentary. And, of course, the movie American Sniper was nominated for many Academy Awards. And, both the Chris Kyle, the author of that book, had symptoms of PTSD. And as many of you know, unfortunately, the man who stands accused of killing him also is believed to have had impulsive, violent behavior based on post-traumatic stress disorder. So post-traumatic stress disorder is an enormous problem in our society. And military-related post-traumatic stress disorder has proved a little bit harder to treat than civilian post-traumatic stress disorder. So we are, in our study, that's called the AT-EASE study, and the military term AT-EASE, AT-EASE, and our website to recruit for this study is called ateasestudy.com. And we are recruiting people with military-related PTSD to take part in this 12-week study. And what we're trying to do there is to test whether improving sleep quality in PTSD will lead to benefits in PTSD generally. Now, in fibromyalgia, when we started, Dr. Moldavsky's work was not widely recognized by the other scientists in the field. I believe that today, sleep quality is widely recognized, and Dr. Harvey Moldavsky's work is broadly appreciated, particularly because we were able to show that improving sleep quality had such broad effects in improving fibromyalgia. In PTSD, I think it's fair to say that the experts already acknowledge that poor sleep quality is an important problem in PTSD. And if someone could find the right medicine that would improve sleep quality, then the expectation would be that PTSD generally would improve. So what we believe is that our medicine is the right medicine. It triggers the right receptors in the brain and corrects the abnormalities of PTSD in a very specific way, such that if we improve the sleep quality of PTSD patients, we believe that many of their other symptoms would get better. One analogy that someone said to me that I think really helps someone without medical training, for example, understand PTSD and how our drug might help is that people have to recognize that when someone is asleep, the brain is not turned off. The brain is very active during sleep. And what the brain does during sleep is it processes memories. And an important thing that the brain does during sleep is to process emotionally charged memories. So what happens in a PTSD patient's brain is that the patient tries to go to sleep to try to chew away at these emotionally charged memories. But if the memory is too painful, then it wakes the patient up and sleep can't do its normal job. So what we hope to do with our medicine is just help sleep quality a little bit so that during sleep, the normal activity that the brain normally does to process emotionally charged memories can work, and that these memories can be detoxified so that the patient can go on and live their life with a new sense of comfort and a sense that even though they still remember the event was painful, they can also have the rationalization that they're no longer at risk. You know, for example, for a veteran, it's yes, I had a bad experience in Iraq, but I'm no longer in Mosul. Wow. I'm out. Right. And, you know, where I am is a place of comfort now.
Wow, well that is fascinating, and thank you for that answer. I'm going to ask the next question here. You basically answered it, but in case there's anything else you wanted to add. So the PTSD trial is enrolling now. I know a lot of people are hoping for good therapy for soldiers, veterans, and like you said, civilians as well. It's been a major source of frustration for the military. Is there anything, can you talk about some of the reasons why TNX 102SL offers some hope? Now you already did, but in case there's any part there I missed out on.
Sure. Well, there are two drugs that are approved for PTSD. One is Paxil, and the other is Zoloft. And those are both antidepressants of the class of medicines called SSRI antidepressants. And they were approved based on data in civilians with PTSD. Now, civilians with PTSD tend to be people who are in auto accidents, maybe the victims of crime, and certain other kinds of traumatic events. But it turns out that there could be differences in PTSD between civilian PTSD and military PTSD, because the experience of Paxil and Zoloft in military-related PTSD has not been as favorable as they were shown to be in civilian PTSD. So there's a lot of questions about whether they're active in military-related PTSD. So we believe that by using our medicine, TNX 102SL, and targeting sleep primarily, that we could have a fundamentally different effect in military-related PTSD and offer some hope to the people that are really struggling with this chronic and right now intractable problem.
Absolutely, and intractable problem, you really said it. The Zoloft and Paxil, unfortunately, PTSD is related to suicide, and Zoloft and Paxil have the warnings on the box that they may also be related to suicide, and so those are the only two products available for if you have PTSD. So that's very exciting. There's a lot of people hoping that program works very well. Okay, thank you so much. So better sleep quality would seem to benefit many conditions outside of these terrible diseases that you're addressing. I can tell you just personally, when I've described TNX 102SL as treating symptoms through better sleep quality, people often say they would benefit from better sleep quality. You potentially have the first sleep quality drug, and fibromyalgia and post-traumatic stress disorder are huge areas by themselves. But am I right to think that there could be a lot of potential outside of those areas as well?
Well, the FDA testing and approval process is very focused on specific indications. So we really can only speak to the indications like fibromyalgia and PTSD, which we are specifically testing TNX 102SL on. I can say that fibromyalgia is probably underdiagnosed, and possibly PTSD is underdiagnosed, because doctors tend not to rush to make a diagnosis when they don't believe that there are good treatments out there that would warrant the diagnosis. So I think that there's a possibility that many people who have fibromyalgia are not yet diagnosed. And if our treatment proves to have the potential that it showed in Best Fit and the tolerability that it showed in Best Fit, then I think that doctors would be more willing to make the diagnosis and to treat some people who may not recognize that they have PTSD or fibromyalgia.
Thank you. That's an interesting insight. So that's something I hadn't considered. If there seems to be a pretty good cure, doctors might be more likely to make the diagnosis in the first place. Very interesting. Thank you.
Another point, Joe, is that tolerability in these patient populations is very important because these patients already have a whole host of symptoms and burdensome things that they're feeling, and they're often more sensitive to medications than the average person. So, to add a drug to a patient with fibromyalgia or PTSD often comes with a lot more than saying, a healthy person and having them go on to a new therapy. So tolerability is very important. The drugs that are approved in fibromyalgia, while they do have efficacy, they also have some tolerability issues that often limit the amount that patients can take and how long patients can stay on. Same thing in PTSD. Patients take a lot of medications that they may have a hard time staying on. So with the tolerability profile that we showed in Best Fit with TNX-102SL, it was very favorable. We had very low rates of adverse events, as you said, no serious adverse events, and a completer rate that was actually higher in the drug group than placebo, which we think bodes very well for these type of primary care markets in fibromyalgia with patients who have lots of symptoms, and in PTSD, which again is a chronic syndrome that patients have to take a drug for a long period of time.
Right, and that's an excellent point. And in both of those conditions, and in fibromyalgia in particular, I'm thinking of a study. I think the average fibromyalgia patient is on almost 3 drugs at any given time. They're desperate to treat their symptoms. So, so tolerability, very huge. Thank you. Okay, so all of that was TNX-102SL for fibromyalgia and post-traumatic stress disorder. You've also developed TNX-201, your newly developed drug for episodic tension type headache, the most common type of headache, just the common headache. It received its investigational new drug clearance last October. You completed your clinical pharmacology study in December, and next quarter you will begin a phase 2 study in episodic tension type headache. That should be a relatively quick study that wraps up this year. If that study goes well, you'll be looking to commence a phase 3 study in this very common ailment. Can you tell our viewers why there is reason to think that TNX-201 might prove to be a good medicine for episodic tension type headache?
Thanks, Joe. We're very excited about TNX-201. There hasn't been a new treatment for a tension type headache in 50 or 60 years, depending on how you look on it. And as you say, it's one of the most common medical problems facing Americans. 80% of adult Americans suffer from tension headaches, and 30% of adult Americans suffer from frequent episodic tension type headaches. So it's a common problem. Right now, the only medicines that are approved to treat episodic tension type headache are drugs that contain the barbiturate butalbital. And these are popular brands, Fiorinol, Fioricet, and there are now some generic versions of these products. But these are very potent medicines, and they certainly make tension type headaches remit in most cases. But they also have liabilities, particularly the liabilities associated with using barbiturates. And barbiturates, as you know, are associated with addiction and abuse, and at high doses have respiratory suppression, interact badly with alcohol, etc. So there are a lot of reasons why a doctor would be reluctant to advance a patient with tension headaches to medicines that contain a barbiturate. Now, on the other side of the scale, or the other spectrum of tension headache, you have the over-the-counter drugs like Tylenol, acetaminophen, or aspirin, acetylsalicylic acid, and also NSAIDs, NSAID, NSAIDs like ibuprofen. Now, these medicines at the low end of the potency scale are available over the counter, but many people are left unsatisfied. So what we see a need for is a product in the middle, a prescription strength product that is, potentially more potent in treating the condition than the over-the-counter drugs, but with a safety and tolerability profile that's perhaps better than the barbiturates. And that's why we're very excited to be studying TNX-201. TNX-201 is the single isomer of isometheptine, and that is a medicine that's been used in the United States for over 70 years. And it's been tested by the market, both in terms of efficacy and safety over these 7 decades. And what we have is an improved version of it because we have the single isomer product as opposed to a mixture of 2 isomers. And we were very pleased with the results of the phase 1 study that we completed in the 4th quarter and reported in the 1st or 2nd week of January. The drug had good tolerability, so we're excited to bring it to the efficacy stage of development and the phase 2 study that you described. But we think that the fact that Americans have taken this medicine for so long, in the 1990s into the early 2000 era, it was part of a combination product called Midrin that was a very popular treatment for headache. And in 1998, one article said that Midrin was the second highest selling headache product in the United States. So the idea that we can bring to market a pure, improved form of isometheptine is very exciting for us.
And to further add to that, Joe, the isometheptine that was on the market before is no longer available. So there's a kind of a convoluted regulatory history to this compound.
Okay.
As Seth mentioned, it was from 70-odd years ago. That was way before the FDA became modernized and had more rigorous standards for drug approvals. So back then, drugs could be approved on safety alone. And then once the FDA was modernized in the 1960s, there was a requirement for efficacy that was put in place. Older drugs were so-called grandfathered in with the requirement to show efficacy at some point in time. It just so happens that the companies that were behind isometheptine had other things that they were working on, and that fell by the wayside from their point of view. And so these combination products did survive for many years, but then eventually were taken off by the FDA in the last few years. So as of right now, there are no approved isometheptine-containing compounds on the market today.
Wow, so that's an excellent opportunity for you with just isometheptine, and the fact that episodic tension-type headache is missing good treatments in general. And then what you say you have the one isomer, and kind of very exciting there is that it seems like that there's the one isomer of isometheptine might be the more beneficial one, and that's the one you've isolated, and the other isomer might have some of the more drawbacks. And so you were sort of able to get the better without the bad. Is that kind of what you did there with that isomer?
That's what we believe based on animal studies. In animal studies, the isomer that we've discarded had a bigger effect on blood pressure than the isomer that we're working with, both on systolic and diastolic blood pressure, which normally is considered to be a liability, moving something from animals to human. And on the other side of it, the isomer that we're working on, it's called the R isomer, which is the right-handed form of the molecule, appears to be the only one that reacts with a receptor in the brain that's normal function is to modulate pain. And we believe we're the first pharmaceutical company to target this receptor. It's called the imidazoline receptor for making a medicine to modulate pain. So we're extremely excited and we believe fortunate to be working on a receptor system whose normal function in the body appears to be regulating pain in the brain. Now I say that because while we were doing our research, and we were well along with our research, a group in China did a experiment where they knocked out the gene for the imidazoline 1 receptor. And that's an experiment where using a technique, they can make a mouse that is genetically deficient in this brain receptor. Everything else about the mouse is normal, just this one gene is missing. And the phenotype of those mice was that they had increased sensitivity to experience pain. Wow. So this appears to be a receptor in the brain whose normal function is to modulate pain. Wow. And we believe that our medicine is a ligand and an agonist for turning on this pain modulatory pathway.
Wow. And this is sort of like what I got excited about with 102SL is, wow, that could be applied other places. So that you have something that's targeting what appears to be something that modulates pain. That excellent for episodic tension type headache. I'm already thinking, wow, that could be exciting. There's a lot of people are looking for opiate alternatives in a lot of conditions. If your isomer is what it might be, then that potentially could have uses outside of episodic tension type headache as well. Am I right about that, or?
Yes, well, we do have plans as a company to develop this product at some point for migraine headache, because there is literature in there is literature supporting the fact that isometheptine, the parent compound, is effective against migraine headache.
Wow.
So that is a short-term goal of us while we develop the tension type headache model. But what you're saying is also very accurate, that there's a possibility that this could have effect on different kinds of pain and could be an entire new class of analgesics. We are interested in pursuing that, but we're already working on two very large problems,
Sure.
tension headache and very shortly migraine headache. So it'll take us a while to get to the broader issues of other kinds of pain. But you also raise a very excellent point about what we're doing as a company. And one of the things we're doing is our primary goal is to develop safe and effective medicines. But in the three conditions that we're talking about, fibromyalgia, post-traumatic stress disorder, and tension headache, in each case, we are not only introducing a new medicine that we believe will be safe and was showed to be efficacious to FDA standards, but we believe we're providing an alternative for patients who are using medicines that have significant liabilities and in some cases aren't effective. Now, in fibromyalgia, that is the opiates. Many patients with fibromyalgia, some estimate 30% of fibromyalgia patients take opiates. They get no benefit from them, and they just expose themselves to the liabilities of opiates.
Yeah.
In the case of post-traumatic stress disorder, if you look at the studies of Veterans Administration patients, over 30% of VA patients are taking benzodiazepines. Yeah. And they are not only not helpful, but if you look on the VA website, you'll see they are contraindicated in post-traumatic stress disorder. So we think that by adding a better medicine, a more effective medicine, we can help patients discontinue the use of medicines like benzodiazepines. And then in tension headache, as you mentioned, we're trying to substitute a new medicine for patients who right now, sometimes the only option for them is to take a barbiturate, the other approved products, and in some cases, a combination of a barbiturate and an opiate. So we are focused on bringing important new medicines to market, and we hope that by bringing these new products to market, patients can decrease the use of some of these other products that either don't work or could lead them to get into trouble.
And that's really excellent points. And even with the opiates, even if there's no risk and you get through it without addiction or something bad happening, you can by blocking pain signals, you can actually have the pain signals become stronger when you stop opiates, actually exacerbating the pain. And you pointed out that the benzodiazepines and non-benzodiazepines are contraindicated for PTSD. And I looked at some of the studies there, and they're actually shown perhaps to make things worse, and so that's why they are contraindicated. And then the same thing with episodic tension type headache. Now the name's eluding me, but if you take too much of the barbiturate and then you stop, you can I forget what the word is.
Sure, there's one condition called rebound headache.
That's it, yeah.
And then a more chronic related condition is called medication overuse headache, and the abbreviation for that is MOH, medication overuse headache. But both of those, exactly as you mentioned, are associated with,
exacerbating
the effect of a barbiturate or an opiate, and then the effects of trying to stop taking them.
Okay, thank you very much. So you're doing some really important work there. You both are shareholders, as are many of the executives and directors. You also have recently bought in the open market. You were hoping to not have to raise money, but the company now has what would seem to be plenty of cash to fund its programs for a long time. Can you give us any color on your feelings on that? And then it looks like more than half of your market cap is in cash, and you have a number of catalysts that will play out this year and next. Can you tell us your perspective on the balance sheet, cash burn, and timeline of product development? I know that's a mouthful there.
Yeah, sure, Joe. So you're absolutely right. So the insiders in the company have really supported this company in its early phases a couple of years ago, before we became a public, institutionally held name, which we really are more now. And as you mentioned, just in the fall of last year, and I think early this year, last maybe 3-4 months, we have had a number of insider warrant exercises for share purchases. And also in our recent financing, which was just a few weeks ago, we did have 3 members of the team, 2 of us included, and one of our board directors did participate in that financing as insiders. So insiders do continue to support the company very closely. We have become an institutional name. We have a number of life science and other public institutional investors who've been supporting us. Those who've been involved in the past have come back for the most part in this most recent round. I think we would all agree that what's most important for a company like ours that's executing on plans to do great things, costs money, we have no money coming in, is to have enough money to do those things that we're planning on doing.
Absolutely.
So we felt that by raising enough money to get through critical milestones in all 3 of our clinical programs, that is fibromyalgia, phase 3 data Q3 of next year, PTSD, phase 2 data in early first half of next year, and phase 2 data in tension type headache in the 4th quarter of this year, we're funded through all 3 of those data readouts.
Brilliant.
We thought that was very important to remove any overhang the market might have had with regard to our stock, and wondered whether our capitalization would be sufficient, but we're certainly able to at this point.
I appreciate you explicitly talking about all 3 of those milestones and thinking that you're good all the way through. Thank you very much. Okay, and then your patents, you both are authors on patents in just even outside of Tonix, but your patents for your products should protect your products in the marketplace for 15 or more years, and you are developing drugs for some of the largest unmet medical needs. It's a big undertaking for a small company to get to the finish line of drug development, and then another big undertaking to market the drugs. You have expressed willingness to go it alone or partner in some form in the past. Now, with all the cash you have, you would seem to have more bargaining power and also the time and money to possibly develop a sales force and focus on taking what Celgene did. They went the independent route and perhaps going Celgene's route. Can you give us any perspective on how you see yourselves as a company now that you have 3 drugs in the clinic and a lot of cash?
So right now we're focused on advancing the products through the clinical development milestones, and the cash gives us a breathing room, and as you say, potentially negotiating power with the partner. We think that particularly the fibromyalgia program and the tension headache program are primary care drugs, meaning that these are drugs that are going to be prescribed by primary care physicians. So with all of the, call it, oversupply of primary care marketing that Big Pharma has, we really believe that the full potential of these products could probably be best realized in the marketing organizations of a big pharmaceutical company. Also, you mentioned our intellectual property. We have worldwide rights. As a matter of fact, we've developed as a company all of our intellectual property. We don't owe royalties or any other kind of encumbrance to anyone for the products that we've developed in-house. So with worldwide rights, we have a lot of flexibility in marketing with, in partnerships, potential partnerships with global players. That being said, we potentially could go it alone. We really haven't made a decision. We will look at all options as they come to us. It's hard to tell when our products would fit with another company, whether it would be the right fit. And also, we're open to the idea of potentially doing regional partnership deals. For example, Japan is a very big market for fibromyalgia.
Right.
Lyrica is approved for fibromyalgia there. Europe is at the dawn of recognizing fibromyalgia, so that there are European companies that could be interested. We have so many possibilities in terms of potential partnerships and the rest of it that it's hard to say how things will play out. But I think that, as we continue to build value in these products, as we continue to grow our organization, we will, I'm sure we'll make the right decisions at the right time. But I do think that it's a little bit different for a company like ours with primary care products than something like Celgene, which markets to an oncology group, to actually build out the kind of marketing organization that can get full potential for your products. And, also in terms of their global strategy, at one point Celgene bought Pharmos and added their European marketing and distribution arm. So, it's hard to look at the future and say, what the potential would be. On the side and the potential of us actually doing this alone, if it came to that, I think that a big factor that would come to play with that is the huge role that social media is having on transforming the marketing of pharmaceuticals. When people talk about the marketing, strength of big pharma companies, for the most part, they're talking about their detail force, the people that call on doctors one-to-one. Mm-hmm. But, one of the things that we're hearing is doctors just don't have time these days with managed care and Obamacare and all these other things, increasing the number of patients that they see every day. Many doctors don't have time to meet with detail people. And there's a lot of talk about how pharmaceutical advertising in the future and marketing will be much more data-driven and much more social media-driven than the current structure. So even though we're only talking about a future that's, 2 or 3 years away, it's hard to look into the future and say what the right decision will be for us and for our shareholders.
That's very exciting, and it's great to hear that you're flexible and pragmatic. But that's very exciting that a small company like yours, and it's very exciting for patients as well. That it wouldn't be who has the biggest, strongest sales force, but if things are data driven, and hey, here really is possibly the best treatments, and that could be very exciting for a small company like yours. So thank you very much for pointing that out. I really appreciate you guys coming on the show and telling us about all your very exciting programs. You're doing some great work, and really wishing the best for you. Anything else you had for us?
Yeah, Joe, I am really grateful to you for recognizing the potential in our company. I mean, we've had a huge amount of growth in the past. Just in the 6 months, as I said at the beginning, we were a fibromyalgia company 6 months ago. Now, fibromyalgia is a large market. The potential has grown from 5 to 15 million patients in the United States alone. But we are much more than that now. We are a PTSD company in the clinic with our PTSD drug. We are in the clinic with our tension headache drug. So we think that we are very exciting in terms of the number of patients that our products will potentially touch and the impact we're going to have on care in the United States. Another thing that you touched on, but we haven't gone into detail on, is our patents. We have extremely strong patent portfolios. Now, most of those are patent applications because if you want to have very long patent periods, they have to be applications because patents only last 20 years. Right. So we have a continuous process of filing important new products, patents on our very differentiated products. And many of our patents have expiration dates 2033, 2034. These are exactly what big pharma companies are looking for in terms of products like that. And finally, with all of our milestones coming up in 2015, I believe that we are a growth company. Absolutely. That we are, as you said, more than half of our market cap right now is in cash. And given the calendar of events that we have coming up in 2015, I think that this is a very attractive point for investors to look at our company and consider coming in.
Well, I do too, and I completely agree. Thank you guys so very much.
Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, thanks, guys. All right, Doctors Leland Gershell and Seth Lederman, thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Seth Lederman and Dr. Leland Gershell, for joining us in studio. Tonix Pharmaceuticals, very exciting, huge markets it's going after. More than half of its value is in cash now. You heard him say that they're good through all 3 of their programs to get through more than a year to get to the big catalyst for all 3 of those programs. Looks like a great story to me at a great price. The upside to me is very, very high. And I'm thrilled to have them in studio. I hope you found that helpful. I'm Joe Springer for the Wall Street Exclusive, helping you make informed decisions so you can succeed in the market.